The air on Zarkan stank of burning synthetics and desperation. Captain Rex Vance stepped off the shuttle ramp onto the cracked landing pad, his boots crunching against debris that had once been part of the spaceport's grand terminal. A decade of civil war had reduced what must have been an impressive interstellar hub to little more than scorched metal and memories. Overhead, the dying sun cast an anemic light across the landscape, tinting everything in sickly yellow. Rex adjusted his environmental suit's filters as he surveyed the devastation. Twisted metal frameworks reached toward the sky like the skeletal fingers of giants. In the distance, the silhouette of what had once been a thriving metropolis stood jagged against the horizon, a testament to what happens when a civilization turns on itself. "Captain Vance?" The voice came from behind him, startling Rex from his observations. He turned to find a tall, willowy alien, dressed in elaborate robes that might once have been magnificent, but now appeared worn and patched in places. The being's translucent skin revealed pulsing blue veins and a circulatory system that seemed to glow from within. Four arms were folded in what Rex recognized as a formal greeting posture. "Chancellor Keth," Rex replied with a slight bow, recalling the briefing materials. "I wasn't expecting a welcoming committee." The Chancellor's inner light pulsed more rapidly. "These are desperate times, Captain. King Orion insisted on expediency. Your reputation preceded you, the human mercenary who negotiated peace between the Taurian Collective and the Nephilim Consortium." Rex grimaced. "That was different. Those species had only been fighting for 3 generations. We've been fighting for 1, Keth said softly. "But for us, 1 generation spans 20 of your Earth years." A transport vehicle hummed into view, hovering above the broken concrete. Unlike everything else Rex had seen so far, it appeared well-maintained, its royal insignia still gleaming despite the dust that covered most of its surface. "The king awaits," Keth said, gesturing toward the vehicle. The palace of Zarkan's royal family stood atop the highest point in the capital city, relatively untouched by the destruction that had claimed the surrounding neighborhoods. Force fields, Rex assumed, watching as the transport passed through several security checkpoints, each manned by soldiers whose armor bore the same insignia as the vehicle. Inside, the palace revealed a different kind of decay. Though structurally intact, there was a heaviness to the air, a sense of profound weariness that permeated the ornate halls. Servants moved with the slow deliberation of those conserving energy. Guards stood at attention, but their eyes held the haunted look of those who had seen too much. The throne room was cavernous, designed to impress with soaring ceilings, adorned with what appeared to be constellations, crafted from luminescent minerals. King Orion sat upon a throne that seemed too large for his diminished frame. Like Chancellor Keth, the king possessed 4 arms and translucent skin, though his appeared more opaque, more weathered by time and tribulation. "Captain Rex Vance of Earth," the king spoke, his voice stronger than his appearance suggested. "You come highly recommended as a mediator. I hope the reports of your skills are not exaggerated." Rex approached the throne and bowed, respecting protocol while maintaining eye contact. "Your Majesty, I'm a soldier for hire, not a diplomat. There are better qualified individuals for peace negotiations." "We've tried diplomats," King Orion replied, waving one of his 4 hands dismissively. "We've tried negotiators from 12 different star systems. None have succeeded." "Perhaps because peace isn't possible," Rex suggested bluntly. The king's internal lights pulsed slowly, methodically. "Perhaps. Or perhaps because all previous mediators approached our conflict as Zarkans would. We need an outsider's perspective, one untainted by our traditions and assumptions." Rex studied the monarch carefully. "What exactly is this conflict about? My briefing was minimal." King Orion gestured, and a holographic display materialized in the center of the throne room. It showed a planet, Zarkan, split into 2 distinct regions, separated by a jagged border. Our world was once united under a single government, the king explained. But disagreements about resource allocation led to a schism. The Northern Territories, led by General Korth, control most of our agricultural lands. The Southern Territories, under Admiral Vex, possess our mining operations and manufacturing centers. Interdependent regions, Rex noted. Each needs what the other has. Precisely, Chancellor Keth interjected, which makes this war all the more tragic and foolish. Both sides now possess weapons capable of planetary destruction. King Orion continued gravely. Our intelligence indicates that without intervention, these weapons will be deployed within 60 days. Our civilization will end. Captain Vance. Rex felt the weight of the statement settle on his shoulders. And you believe I can prevent this? I believe you can offer a perspective neither side has considered, the king said. You are not bound by our traditions or our history. You can speak truths we cannot. For an exorbitant fee, Rex reminded him, uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was taking. The king's inner light pulsed more brightly. If you succeed, Captain, you will be rewarded beyond your imagination. If you fail, payment will be irrelevant. There will be no one left to collect it. A chill ran down Rex's spine. No pressure, then. I will assign my daughters to assist you, King Orion said, gesturing toward the side of the throne room, where two figures stepped forward. Rex found himself facing two Zarkan females, their translucent skin more vibrant than the males he'd seen, with internal lighting that shifted through delicate color patterns. Both possessed the characteristic forearms and elongated features of their race, but where one's internal circulation glowed with cool blue tones, the other's pulsed with warmer amber. Princess Zelaya, the king indicated the blue-hued female, and Princess Tai, he gestured to the amber one. They have studied both Earth culture and military strategy. They will serve as your cultural liaisons and advisors. Rex bowed to each princess in turn, noting the curious way they studied him. There was something in their gaze that went beyond mere scientific interest in an alien species. We've never met a human before, Princess Zelaya said, her voice melodic and lighter than the male Zarkans. Your species' reputation for creativity in crisis is what prompted our father to seek your assistance. And your reputation for adaptability, Princess Tai added, her voice similar yet distinct, with a slightly lower resonance. Zarkans can be rigid in our thinking. That rigidity has brought us to the brink of extinction, the king said solemnly. Captain Vance, you have 58 days to prevent our mutual destruction. My daughters will provide you with all available resources and information. Chancellor Keth will arrange your accommodations and security detail. Rex understood a dismissal when he heard one. He bowed again to the king, then to the princesses. I'll need to speak with the leaders of both factions, he said, as soon as possible. Arrangements will be made, Chancellor Keth assured him. Though I must warn you, getting General Korth and Admiral Vex in the same room has proven impossible thus far. Then I'll meet them separately, Rex replied. For now. As Rex followed Chancellor Keth from the throne room, he felt the princess's eyes upon him. Turning slightly, he caught them watching him intently, their internal lights pulsing in what he assumed was communication between them. What have I gotten myself into? Rex wondered. Not for the first time since accepting this contract. The payment offered had been substantial enough to set him up for life, if there was a life to be had after this mission. Chancellor Keth led Rex to a suite of rooms in the palace's eastern wing. The accommodations were opulent by any standard, though Rex noted signs of conservation, lights dimmed to minimum levels, climate controls set to basic functionality rather than luxury settings. Our resources grow scarcer by the day, Keth explained, noticing Rex's observations. Even the royal family makes sacrifices. Tell me about these factions, Rex said, setting down his gear bag. What drives them beyond the obvious resource disparities? Keth's inner light pulsed thoughtfully. It began as an economic dispute, but as with many conflicts, ideology soon overshadowed practicality. General Korth believes in agrarian traditionalism, a return to our ancestral ways of food cultivation and community-based governance. Admiral Vex champions technological progression and centralized authority.
And the king? Where does he stand?
King Orion sees value in both perspectives. Before the war, he attempted to implement policies that balanced traditional practices with technological advancement. For this, both sides accused him of favoring the other. Rex moved to the window, gazing out at the broken city below. A ruler caught between extremes. Tale as old as time. Indeed, Keth agreed. The princesses will join you shortly to provide additional context. They've been studying Earth's conflict resolution techniques extensively. After Keth departed, Rex spent time unpacking his few possessions and checking the security of his quarters, old habits that had kept him alive through numerous dangerous assignments. He was midway through a perimeter scan when a soft chime announced visitors. Princesses Zelaya and Tai entered, having changed from their formal court attire into more practical garments that reminded Rex of scientific uniforms, though still elegant in design. "Captain Vance," Zelaya greeted him, her internal illumination brightening slightly. "We hope your accommodations are satisfactory." "More than adequate," Rex assured her. "Though I'm more concerned with understanding what I'm up against than where I'll be sleeping." Tai approached, carrying what appeared to be a data tablet. "We've compiled information on both faction leaders, their military histories, personal backgrounds, psychological assessments." "Psychological assessments?" Rex raised an eyebrow. "We maintain extensive profiles on all key military and political figures," Zelaya explained. "Standard procedure in any protracted conflict." Rex accepted the tablet, scrolling through the information. "This is comprehensive. Knowledge is our primary weapon now," Tai said. "Physical arsenals have reached destructive parity." Rex studied the princesses as they moved about the room, noting their graceful coordination and the way they seemed to communicate without speaking, their internal lights pulsing in patterns that clearly conveyed meaning between them. "You two are twins?" he asked, observing their similar features despite the different coloration. "Not in the human sense," Zelaya replied. "We were spawned in the same season, from different genetic contributors, but raised together as royal siblings. Our species doesn't have identical genetic duplicates as humans sometimes do," Tai added. "But we share a deep connection that your kind might associate with twinship." Rex nodded, returning his attention to the data. "These faction leaders, they were once friends." The princesses exchanged glances, their lights pulsing rapidly. "More than friends," Zelaya said carefully. "They were orbit partners." Rex looked up. "I'm not familiar with that term." "In your terminology, perhaps romantic partners would be closest," Tai explained. "Though our concept of romantic bonding differs from Earth norms. Orbit partners circle each other's lives, maintaining their individual paths while exerting mutual gravitational influence. And now they're trying to kill each other," Rex mused. "Personal betrayal layered over political division, that complicates things." "There's something else you should know," Zelaya said, her internal light dimming slightly. "Something not in those files." Rex set down the tablet. "I'm listening." "Before the war," Tai continued, "our people had a tradition called Harmony Gathering. It was a ritual of trust building between potential allies or partners." "What kind of ritual?" Rex asked, his instincts suddenly alert. "It involved shared sustenance, cultural exchange, and physical bonding," Zelaya explained, her skin becoming more translucent as her internal light pulsed more rapidly. "Physical bonding," Rex repeated slowly. "You mean sex?" "Not precisely," Tai corrected. "Zarkans don't reproduce sexually as humans do. Our physical bonding involves the synchronization of bioelectrical fields, facilitated by physical proximity and certain ritualized touches. It creates a temporary empathic connection. And this ritual was used for diplomatic purposes? Rex asked, skeptical. For millennia, Zelaya confirmed. It was how we prevented conflicts before they began, by establishing mutual understanding at the most fundamental level. When did this practice end? With the onset of the Civil War, Tai said. Trust eroded too quickly. The last attempted harmony gathering between General Korth and Admiral Vex ended in accusations of empathic manipulation. Since then, the practice has been abandoned. Rex paced the room, processing this information. So you're saying that before your people started killing each other, they used to engage in ritualized empathic bonding to prevent conflicts? Yes, both princesses answered simultaneously. And no one has suggested reviving this practice as a way to end the war? The princesses exchanged another look, their internal lights pulsing in that silent communication. It would be considered inappropriate, Zelaya said carefully. The ritual requires vulnerability. Neither side is willing to expose themselves in that way to enemies. But what if they weren't the ones participating? Rex asked, an idea beginning to form. What if a neutral third party served as the conduit? Tai's inner light flared with sudden understanding. You mean yourself? That's unprecedented. No off-worlder has ever participated in a harmony gathering. Is it physically possible? Rex pressed. Or would our biological differences make it impossible? Theoretically, it could work, Zelaya said, her scientific training evident in her methodical consideration. Human nervous systems operate on electrical impulses, as do ours. The primary difference is that yours are contained within an opaque physical structure, while ours are visible. You would need training, Tai added. The ritual follows specific patterns designed to gradually align disparate energy fields. Done incorrectly, it can cause significant neural distress. Rex considered the implications. If he could somehow serve as a bridge between the warring factions, using their own abandoned traditions as the framework. I need to understand this ritual completely, he decided. And I need to meet with each faction leader separately before proposing anything. The princesses nodded in agreement, their internal lights pulsing in synchronization. We will teach you, Zelaya promised. Though we should inform our father of this approach, Tai cautioned. Rex shook his head. Not yet. First, let me gauge whether the faction leaders would even consider such a proposal. If they reject it outright, we'll need another strategy. The three spent the remainder of the day reviewing the data on General Korth and Admiral Vex, identifying potential leverage points and areas of common ground that had been overlooked in previous negotiation attempts. As night fell on Zarkan, casting the broken city into darkness, relieved only by occasional security lights, Rex found himself increasingly aware of the princess's presence, their gentle luminescence providing a soft counterpoint to the harsh realities they discussed. You should rest, Zelaya eventually suggested, noticing Rex's fatigue. Human physiology requires regular sleep cycles, does it not? Rex smiled wryly. It does, though mercenary work tends to teach you to function without it. Nevertheless, Tai insisted, optimum cognitive function will be essential in the days ahead. We've arranged for you to meet General Korth tomorrow morning and Admiral Vex in the afternoon. That was fast, Rex said, impressed. We may be in the midst of civil war, Zelaya replied with a hint of pride, but royal requests still carry weight. After the princesses departed, Rex tried to sleep, but found himself restless, his mind cycling through potential approaches to the impossible task before him. 57 days remained before planetary destruction became inevitable, according to the king. Less than 2 months to undo a decade of entrenched hatred and mistrust. Morning arrived too quickly, bringing with it the stark yellow light of Zarkan's aging sun. Rex, dressed in his formal mercenary uniform, a concession to protocol that he rarely made but deemed necessary for this mission. The dark gray material was free of insignia or allegiance markers, identifying him only as a professional soldier, without national or planetary ties. Chancellor Keth arrived to escort him to the neutral meeting facility, where General Korth awaited. "The general has allowed 1 hour," Keth informed him, as they traveled in the royal transport. "He is notoriously punctual and intolerant of delays." "Noted," Rex replied, reviewing mental notes on the northern faction leader. The meeting facility was a small administrative building on the outskirts of the capital, one of the few structures that had been jointly rebuilt after being destroyed in the early days of the conflict. Its neutral status was maintained by automated security systems, programmed to terminate any detected weapons or surveillance devices. General Korth was already seated at the conference table when Rex entered. The Zarkan military leader had the same basic physiological features as other members of his species, but his translucent skin was crisscrossed with what appeared to be deliberate scarification, traditional markings that pulsed with a deep green internal light. "Captain Vance," the general acknowledged without rising. "I'm told you believe you can succeed where all others have failed." Rex took the seat opposite him. "I haven't claimed that, General. I've only agreed to try." "A mercenary's attempt at modesty?" Korth's internal light pulsed in what Rex was beginning to recognize as skepticism. "Your fee suggests otherwise." "My fee reflects the risk," Rex countered, "not guaranteed success." The general studied him with 4 eyes that reminded Rex of polished emeralds. "What do you know of our conflict, human?"
I know that you control the food. Admiral Vex controls the technology. And together, you're ready to destroy everything rather than compromise.
Korth's scarification patterns flared brighter. "Simplistic analysis."
I have limited time. General, simplicity serves us both.
For a moment, Rex thought he'd miscalculated, pushed too hard too quickly. Then, surprisingly, Korth's internal light settled into a steadier rhythm. "Fair enough," the general conceded. "What do you propose?"
First, I need to understand what previous negotiation attempts have failed to address. What fundamental needs of your people remain unmet in all proposed settlements?
Korth leaned forward, his 4 arms positioning themselves in what Rex recognized from his briefing materials as a posture of serious discourse. "Security," the general said firmly. "Not merely military defense, but cultural preservation. The Southern Territories would transform our agricultural communities into mechanized production facilities, destroying ways of life that have sustained our people for millennia." Rex nodded.
"And you believe Admiral Vex doesn't understand this concern?" "Oh, she understands," Korth replied, a bitter edge to his voice. "She simply doesn't value it. Progress at any cost is her creed."
Rex noted the personal pronoun, her, and the emotional undertone when Korth spoke of his former orbit partner. "Tell me about the Harmony gatherings," he said, watching carefully for the general's reaction. Korth's internal light flickered rapidly, his scarification patterns momentarily dimming. "Who told you of those? Does it matter? I'm trying to understand all aspects of Zarkan culture that might be relevant to resolving this conflict." The general's 4 hands clenched simultaneously. "Harmony gatherings are an obsolete practice from a more innocent time." "They worked, though, didn't they?" Rex pressed. "They prevented conflicts like this one." "They required trust," Korth said sharply. "Trust that no longer exists." "Trust can be rebuilt," Rex suggested, "with the right intermediary." Korth stared at him for a long moment. "You're proposing to revive the ritual? With yourself as participant?" "I'm exploring all options," Rex replied carefully, "including cultural traditions that served your people well in the past." The general's internal light pulsed in a pattern Rex couldn't interpret. "You don't understand what you're suggesting, human. The Harmony Gathering isn't some diplomatic handshake. It requires intimate knowledge of Zarkan physiology and psychology. Knowledge I'm willing to acquire," Rex said firmly. If it could prevent planetary destruction. Korth rose abruptly, his forearms extending in what might have been aggression or mere emphasis. Our meeting time has concluded. Captain Vance, I suggest you reconsider your approach before our next encounter. As the general departed, Rex remained seated, replaying the conversation in his mind. Beneath the outward rejection, he'd sensed something else, a flicker of consideration, perhaps even hope. Chancellor Keth reappeared to escort Rex back to the palace for a brief respite before his meeting with Admiral Vex. The general seemed agitated when he left. Keth observed as they traveled. Not unusual, but the pattern of his internal light suggested disturbance rather than anger. I may have touched on a sensitive subject, Rex admitted. May I ask which one? Harmony gatherings. Keth's internal light dimmed noticeably. Ah, yes, that would explain his reaction. The princesses mentioned the practice, Rex explained. I'm considering whether it might offer a framework for renewed dialogue. A bold approach, Keth said carefully, though perhaps not without merit. The ritual did serve us well for generations. Would the Admiral be equally disturbed by the suggestion? Keth considered this. Perhaps more so. Admiral Vex was the one who accused General Korth of empathic manipulation during their last attempt at the ritual. The accusation effectively ended both their personal relationship and the practice itself. This information added a new dimension to Rex's understanding of the conflict. So there's personal betrayal beneath the political division. As is often the case in the most intractable conflicts, Keth agreed. Rex's meeting with Admiral Vex took place in a different facility, a secured bunker beneath what had once been a government building. The journey there required passing through multiple military checkpoints, manned by Southern faction troops, whose armor bore technological enhancements that Rex's trained eye recognized as advanced battlefield systems. Unlike General Korth's traditional appearance, Admiral Vex embraced technological modification. Her translucent skin was augmented with what appeared to be metallic filaments that enhanced her natural bioluminescence, giving her internal light a distinctive silver-blue quality. Where Korth had displayed ritual scarification, Vex wore integrated tech that seemed to function as both armor and communication system. Captain Rex Vance, she greeted him, using his full name and rank with precise pronunciation. Your reputation as a problem solver precedes you. Rex nodded in acknowledgement. Admiral, thank you for meeting with me. Curiosity, not courtesy, motivated my acceptance, she replied candidly. I'm interested in what approach you believe might succeed, where all logical solutions have failed. Rex noted her emphasis on logical and adjusted his strategy accordingly. Logic serves well when all parties share the same premises. In this conflict, I suspect differing foundational assumptions have created an impasse that mere logical negotiation cannot resolve. Vex's enhanced internal light pulsed in a pattern that suggested interest. Elaborate. You and General Korth prioritize different values. Technological progress versus cultural preservation. Both are valid perspectives with logical foundations. The problem isn't a failure of logic, but a failure of mutual understanding. Understanding requires willingness, Vex countered. The Northern faction refuses to acknowledge the inevitable necessity of technological adaptation, and the Southern faction refuses to recognize the value of traditional practices, Rex suggested. Vex's forearms moved in a gesture that Rex interpreted as grudging acknowledgement. Traditions that cannot evolve become fossils. Captain, we seek to preserve our species, not mumify it. Yet your weapons now threaten to eradicate that species entirely, Rex pointed out. Hardly an evolutionary advantage. For a moment, Vex's internal light dimmed, and Rex glimpsed something beneath the Admiral's confident exterior. Regret, perhaps, or weariness. Mutual destruction was never the goal, she said quietly. But we cannot surrender our future to those who would keep us bound to the past. What if there were a way to bridge that divide, to create genuine understanding between your faction and Korth's? Vex studied him intently. You're referring to something specific. Harmony gatherings, Rex confirmed, watching her reaction closely. Unlike Korth's obvious discomfort, Vex's response was more controlled. A brief fluctuation in her internal light, followed by deliberate stabilization. An antiquated practice, she dismissed, and one proven vulnerable to manipulation. By whom? Rex asked directly. You or Korth? Vex's enhanced bioluminescence flared sharply. You step beyond your role, mercenary. My role is to find a solution before your world destroys itself, Rex replied evenly. That requires understanding all aspects of the conflict, including personal ones. For several seconds, Vex remained silent, her internal light pulsing in patterns that seemed to reflect internal deliberation. The Harmony Gathering failed because Korth attempted to use our former connection to influence my strategic decisions, she finally said. He denied it, of course, but I felt the empathic push, subtle, but unmistakable. And if a neutral third party were to participate? Someone with no stake in either faction's ideology? Vex's eyes narrowed. You're proposing yourself as mediator in a ritual you cannot possibly understand. I'm proposing to learn, Rex corrected, with proper instruction. From whom? The king, his advisors? They claim neutrality while cowering in their protected enclave. From those who understand both sides of the conflict, Rex said. Perhaps even from you and General Korth directly. This suggestion clearly surprised the Admiral. Her internal light pulsed rapidly, the technological enhancements amplifying the effect. You would submit to instruction from both faction leaders? She asked skeptically. If it could prevent planetary destruction? Yes. Vex rose, circling the conference table with measured steps. Your species has a reputation for adaptability, Captain Vance. Some would say recklessness. This proposal demonstrates both qualities. Is that a refusal? It is consideration, Vex replied carefully. I will need to consult with my senior advisors. Rex recognized the response as diplomatic speak for, I need time to think about this. He'd achieved his immediate goal, planting the seed of possibility in both faction leaders' minds. I'll await your decision, he said, rising. But I should warn you, according to King Orion's intelligence, we have less than 2 months before mutual destruction becomes inevitable. Vex's enhanced light dimmed slightly. 57 days, to be precise. Our calculations match the royal projections. As Rex departed the bunker under escort, he reflected on the meetings. Both faction leaders had reacted to the mention of Harmony gatherings with complex emotions. Discomfort, certainly, but also something that might be worked with. Neither had outright rejected the possibility. Upon returning to the palace, Rex found Princesses Zelaya and Tai waiting in his quarters, their expressions expectant. How did the meetings proceed? Zelaya asked, as soon as he entered. Rex removed his formal jacket, exhausted from the day's diplomatic navigation. Better than expected, worse than hoped. Neither leader rejected the Harmony Gathering concept outright, but both expressed serious reservations. That they discussed it at all is significant, Tai noted, her amber internal light pulsing thoughtfully. The subject has been taboo in diplomatic circles for years. They're desperate, Rex said, pouring himself water from a carafe. Desperation makes the unthinkable thinkable. Did you propose yourself as participant? Zelaya inquired. I suggested it as a possibility. Both questioned whether a human could properly engage in the ritual. The princesses exchanged glances, their internal lights communicating in that silent language Rex was beginning to recognize, but couldn't yet interpret. We could teach you the fundamentals, Tai offered, if you're serious about this approach. I'm serious about preventing planetary destruction, Rex replied. If this ritual offers even a small chance of success, I need to understand it fully. Zalea moved to the center of the room, her blue internal light brightening. The harmony gathering follows specific patterns of energy exchange. It begins with shared sustenance, specially prepared foods and beverages that enhance neural receptivity. Then progresses to cultural exchange. Tai continued, joining her sister. Each participant shares something meaningful from their heritage: music, poetry, personal history, and finally, physical bonding, Zalea concluded, which for Zarkans involves synchronized bioelectrical fields facilitated by specific contact points. Rex set down his water glass. And you believe a human could participate in this final stage? Theoretically, Tai said, her scientific background evident in her measured response. Though it would require preparation and practice. Show me, Rex decided. The princesses again exchanged glances, their internal lights pulsing rapidly. The full ritual requires extensive preparation, Zalea cautioned. But we could demonstrate the basic empathic connection technique. That would be a start, Rex agreed. Tai approached him first. May I have your hand, Captain? Rex extended his right hand. Tai took it gently between two of her four hands, her touch surprisingly warm against his skin. Our species' empathic abilities function through bioelectrical field synchronization, she explained. Your nervous system operates on similar principles, though your electrical impulses are contained within your opaque physical structure. Zalea joined them, placing one hand on Rex's shoulder and another on her sister's arm, completing a circuit. Close your eyes, she instructed Rex. Focus on your breathing and the points of contact between us. Rex complied, focusing as directed. For several moments, he felt nothing beyond the physical sensation of their touch. Then, gradually, he became aware of a subtle vibration, a humming energy that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the princess's internal lights. You're trying too hard, Tai said softly. Don't reach for the connection. Allow it to form naturally. Rex forced himself to relax, to stop actively seeking the sensation. As he did, the vibration intensified, becoming a current that flowed from Tai's hands into his, up his arm, across his chest, and out through his shoulder where Zalea maintained contact. With startling suddenness, Rex felt a wave of emotion that wasn't his own, concern tinged with hope, scientific curiosity, and something deeper, more personal that he couldn't immediately identify. His eyes flew open in surprise, breaking the connection. You felt it, Zalea observed, her internal light pulsing rapidly. Yes, Rex confirmed, slightly disoriented by the experience. Is that how it always works? That was merely the most basic connection, Tai explained. The harmony gathering involves progressively deeper levels of empathic resonance, culminating in a state where participants temporarily experience each other's emotional perspectives. It's not mind-reading, Zalea clarified, seeing Rex's expression. You don't access thoughts or memories directly. Rather, you experience the emotional context that shapes another's worldview. Rex considered the implications. And this is what you believe could bridge the gap between Korth and Vex, allowing them to feel each other's emotional reality? Not directly, Tai said. As we explained, neither would trust the other enough for direct connection. But you, as a neutral party, could theoretically form separate connections with each, then serve as conduit for a mediated empathic exchange. Has this ever been done before? Rex asked. Not in recorded history, Zalea admitted, but the theoretical basis is sound. And would this empathic exchange be bidirectional? Would they also experience my emotions? The princesses again exchanged glances. To some degree, yes, Tai confirmed. The connection cannot be entirely one-sided. Those participating would gain empathic insight into your emotional perspective as well. Rex walked to the window, looking out at the devastated city beyond. That complicates things, Does it? Zelaya asked, moving to stand beside him. Your neutrality is your strength in this situation. You have no historical attachment to either faction's ideology. But I do have opinions, Rex pointed out. Judgments, biases based on my own cultural background. All mediators do, Tai said, joining them. The difference is that in a harmony gathering, those biases become transparent rather than hidden influences. Over the next 3 days, Rex continued his training with the princesses while awaiting responses from the faction leaders. The practice sessions grew longer and more complex, progressing from basic empathic connections to more sustained exchanges that left Rex increasingly aware of the princess's distinct emotional signatures. Zelaya's empathic presence was characterized by precise, analytical patterns, overlaid with deeply held ethical principles. The mind of a scientist governed by moral clarity. Tai's emotional landscape revealed similar intellectual rigor, but tempered with greater intuitive flexibility and a profound curiosity about emotional states themselves. Both princesses, Rex discovered, harbored deep concern for their world's fate coupled with genuine fascination with him, as both representative of humanity and individual. This personal interest occasionally manifested in ways that seemed to go beyond scientific or diplomatic curiosity, though cultural differences made it difficult for Rex to interpret with certainty. On the 4th day, Chancellor Keth arrived with news. Both faction leaders have agreed to consider your proposal, he announced, his internal light pulsing with what Rex now recognized as cautious optimism. They request a joint meeting to discuss parameters. A joint meeting? Rex repeated, surprised. They're willing to be in the same room. In the neutral facility only, Keth clarified, and with strict security protocols. But yes, this represents significant progress already. Princesses Zelaya and Tai, who had been present for the announcement, exchanged meaningful glances. When will this meeting take place? Rex asked. Tomorrow at midday, Keth replied. I've been instructed to inform you that both leaders expect detailed explanation of how you envision this adapted harmony gathering. After Keth departed, Rex turned to the princesses. I need to understand every aspect of this ritual before tomorrow. No surprises. The sisters nodded in unison. There is one element we haven't yet discussed fully, Zelaya said carefully. The sustenance portion of the gathering. The food and drink, Rex recalled. You mentioned they enhance neural receptivity. Yes, Tai confirmed. Traditionally, the gathering begins with consumption of specific compounds that temporarily increase empathic sensitivity. You're talking about psychoactive substances, Rex translated. In crude terms, yes, Zelaya acknowledged. Though they're specifically formulated to enhance particular neural pathways rather than cause general consciousness alteration. Would these substances affect a human the same way they affect Zarkans? The princesses exchanged another look. We've analyzed your biological samples provided during palace security screening, Tai explained. Based on human neurophysiology, we believe the effects would be similar, though perhaps more pronounced due to your species' lack of evolutionary adaptation to the compounds. More pronounced how? Rex pressed. Increased emotional receptivity, Zelaya clarified. Reduced analytical filtering. Greater access to empathic centers, normally subdued in human brain function. You'd feel more, Tai said simply. Both your own emotions and those of others in the connection. Rex considered this information carefully. Are these substances habit-forming? Dangerous. Not in the quantities used for the ritual, Zelaya assured him. They metabolize completely within 24 hours, leaving no lasting physiological changes. I'll need to test them before proposing their use in the actual gathering, Rex decided. I can't risk unpredictable reactions during such a critical meeting. A wise precaution, Tai agreed. We can prepare a minimal dose for you to experience this evening. The remainder of the day was spent in further preparation, reviewing the complete ritual structure, discussing potential adaptations for cross-species participation, and analyzing psychological profiles of both faction leaders to anticipate their concerns and objections. As evening approached, the princesses returned with a small vial containing luminescent liquid that pulsed with colors reminiscent of their own internal lights. "This is a diluted preparation," Zalaya explained, placing the vial on the table between them. 1/4 the standard ceremonial dosage. "The effects should manifest within minutes and last approximately 2 hours," Tai added. "We will remain with you throughout to monitor your response and guide you through the experience." Rex studied the vial with professional wariness. Throughout his mercenary career, he'd maintained strict policies about mind-altering substances, primarily avoiding them entirely, with rare exceptions for specific contract requirements. "What exactly should I expect?" he asked. "Initially, heightened sensory awareness," Zalaya explained. "Colors may appear more vibrant, sounds more distinct, then increased emotional sensitivity," Tai continued, "both to your own emotional states and to ours, if we establish connection. And, finally, temporary enhancement of empathic receptivity." Zalaya concluded, "making the harmony connection more accessible to your human neurophysiology." Rex picked up the vial, watching the liquid pulse with internal light. "Bottoms up, then." He consumed the contents in a single swallow. The liquid tasted surprisingly pleasant, sweet with underlying complexity, reminiscent of earth fruits, but distinctly alien. For several minutes, nothing seemed to happen. Rex was about to comment on the delay when he noticed the princess's internal lights beginning to shimmer with heightened definition. What had previously appeared as general bioluminescence now revealed itself as intricate patterns of energy flowing through complex circulatory networks. "Your internal structures," he said, fascinated. "They're beautiful." The princess's lights pulsed in synchronized patterns that Rex suddenly recognized as pleasure at the compliment. "You're beginning to perceive our bioelectrical fields more directly," Zalaya confirmed. "This is the first stage." Rex became aware of other sensory enhancements. The subtle sounds of the palace's environmental systems, previously background noise, now distinct and melodic. The texture of his clothing against his skin, each fiber individually perceptible. "How do you feel?" Tai asked, her voice carrying emotional overtones that Rex could now perceive as genuine concern, layered with scientific interest. "Aware," Rex replied, struggling to articulate the experience. "Everything has more dimensions." "Would you like to attempt connection?" Zalaya suggested, extending 2 of her 4 hands. Rex nodded, reaching out. As their hands met, the subtle current he'd experienced in previous practice sessions now flowed with unmistakable presence, carrying with it emotional nuances he'd previously only glimpsed. Zalaya's concern for her world's future washed over him, not merely as abstract worry, but as visceral love for her home planet and its people, coupled with fear of loss so profound it momentarily took his breath away. Beneath that immediate concern lay deeper currents. Her scientific curiosity about him as both human and individual, her sense of responsibility as royal daughter, and something more personal, a growing affection tinged with uncertainty. "That's intense," Rex managed, maintaining the connection despite his surprise. Tai joined the circuit, creating a triangular connection as she had during their practice sessions. Her emotional landscape flowed into the exchange, similar concerns for Zarkan's fate, but processed differently, with greater emphasis on intuitive understanding of factional perspectives. Scientific interest colored by philosophical inquiry about consciousness itself, and that same personal affection for Rex, though expressed through different emotional pathways. "This is what the faction leaders would experience?" Rex asked, his voice sounding strange to his own ears. "A more structured version," Zalaya confirmed, her voice carrying empathic undertones that added layers of meaning to her words. The ritual progresses through specific stages, each building upon the last.
And they would feel my emotions as clearly as I'm feeling yours?
Yes, Tai confirmed. The connection is reciprocal, though a skilled participant can choose which emotional aspects to emphasize or minimize. As the substance's effects continued to develop, Rex experienced progressively deeper levels of empathic connection with the princesses. What began as perception of surface emotions evolved into understanding of the context that shaped those emotions. Zalaya's childhood experiences with off-world visitors that had sparked her scientific curiosity. Tai's early recognition of her empathic sensitivity that had led to her diplomatic training. More surprising was their growing personal interest in him, not merely as diplomatic project or scientific curiosity, but as potential orbit partner. The concept translated imperfectly through the empathic connection, carrying connotations of romantic attachment blended with profound mutual respect and complementary life trajectories. "You're both interested in me," Rex said aloud, naming the emotional current he'd been sensing. Romantically, the princess's internal lights pulsed rapidly, patterns shifting in what Rex now recognized as embarrassment, mingled with confirmation. "We had not intended to reveal that aspect yet," Zalaya acknowledged, her hands still maintaining connection with Rex's. "Our personal feelings are separate from our diplomatic mission," Tai assured him. "They won't interfere with our responsibilities." Rex found himself responding to their emotional honesty with his own, allowing them to sense his growing attachment to them both, his appreciation of their distinct qualities and shared commitments. In human culture, relationships typically involve two individuals, he explained, feeling it important to clarify this cultural difference. "We're aware of human monogamous tendencies," Zalaya replied, amusement coloring her empathic presence. Zarkan relationships often involve multiple orbit partners, particularly among royal lineages. "Our interest in you is both individual and shared," Tai added. "We don't compete but complement." The empathic connection allowed Rex to understand this concept more fully than words alone could convey. The sisters' relationship with each other formed a foundation upon which additional connections could be built, creating not a divided attachment, but an expanded one. As the substance's effects gradually diminished over the following hours, the three maintained intermittent empathic contact, discussing both the upcoming meeting with faction leaders and the personal revelations that had emerged during the session. "This experience has been invaluable," Rex acknowledged, as his perception returned to normal baseline. "I understand the ritual's potential much more clearly now, and its limitations," Zalaya noted. "Even with chemical enhancement, empathic connection cannot force reconciliation. It can only create the conditions for it by establishing mutual understanding. Understanding that's been absent from all previous negotiation attempts," Rex pointed out. "That's what makes this approach worth attempting, despite the risks." The joint meeting with faction leaders was scheduled for midday in the neutral facility where Rex had first met with General Korth. Security protocols were extensive. Both leaders would arrive with minimal escorts. All weapon systems would be deactivated within a 1-kilometer radius, and automated defensive measures would neutralize any detected aggression. Rex arrived early, with Princesses Zalaya and Tai, who would serve as both cultural liaisons and scientific resources during the discussion. The princesses had prepared visual materials explaining the adapted harmony gathering protocol that Rex had developed based on their guidance. General Korth arrived first, his internal light pulsing with obvious tension despite his controlled exterior. His forearms were positioned in what Rex now recognized as a defensive posture, ready to react to perceived threats. "Captain Vance," the general acknowledged with minimal courtesy. "Princesses." Admiral Vex arrived precisely on schedule, her enhanced bioluminescence creating a striking contrast to Korth's more traditional appearance. Where he embraced ancestral scarification patterns, She displayed technological augmentation, their ideological differences literally embodied in their physical presentations. This meeting is unprecedented, Vex noted, taking position at the opposite end of the conference table from Korth. I trust it will prove productive, rather than merely symbolic. That depends on your willingness to consider unconventional approaches, Rex replied, remaining standing as both faction leaders took their seats. As you both know, I've proposed adapting the traditional harmony gathering ritual to serve as framework for renewed dialogue between your factions. A ritual abandoned for good reason, Korth interjected, his internal light pulsing with what Rex now recognized as discomfort, tinged with lingering anger. Because it was manipulated, Vex countered, her enhanced light flaring briefly before stabilizing. By parties who prioritized agenda over honest exchange. Rex raised a hand, interrupting the familiar pattern of accusation before it could escalate. Those concerns are precisely why I've proposed serving as intermediary. As an off-worlder with no stake in either faction's ideology, I can function as neutral conduit. The princesses activated the visual display they had prepared, showing diagrams of the proposed adaptation. The ritual would be modified to accommodate cross-species participation, Zalea explained, highlighting key points in the process. Captain Vance would engage in separate harmony connections with each faction leader, then serve as bridge for indirect empathic exchange. This approach eliminates the possibility of direct manipulation between factions, Tai added, while still allowing for the essential empathic understanding that made traditional gatherings effective. General Korth studied the display, his internal light pulsing in patterns that suggested both skepticism and reluctant interest. You've undergone preliminary testing of this approach? Yes, Rex confirmed. The princesses have guided me through basic empathic connection techniques and neural enhancement procedures. Cross-species compatibility has been established. With royal participants who share genetic lineage and cultural context, Vex pointed out, our factional differences create significantly greater empathic barriers, which is precisely why this approach could succeed where conventional negotiation has failed. Rex argued, the empathic connection cuts through intellectual justification to reveal underlying emotional realities. Emotional realities can be manipulated, Korth said darkly. Not when mediated through a neutral third party, Rex countered. I would be able to perceive any attempt at empathic distortion. The faction leaders exchanged glances, the first direct acknowledgement Rex had witnessed between them. The procedure would take place in 3 phases, Zalea continued, advancing the display to show the proposed timeline. Initial individual connections would be established separately, allowing each participant to become comfortable with the process. The mediated exchange would occur only after both parties confirmed readiness. And the location? Vex inquired. The ancient Hall of Concord, Tai suggested. It stands in the neutral zone and was historically used for harmony gatherings between regional leaders. A symbolic choice, Korth noted, his internal light pulsing in what Rex now recognized as grudging approval. Symbolism matters, Rex said, especially when rebuilding trust. For nearly 2 hours, they discussed technical aspects of the proposed gathering, security measures, procedural safeguards, contingency plans for various scenarios. Throughout the discussion, Rex observed subtle shifts in the faction leaders' interactions, moments of unintentional synchronization in their internal light patterns, brief lapses into more familiar communication styles before conscious barriers reasserted themselves. The planetary destruction timeline gives us 53 days, Rex reminded them as the meeting approached its conclusion. I propose scheduling the gathering for 7 days from now, allowing time for specific preparation while recognizing the urgency of our situation. The faction leaders again exchanged glances, longer this time, with internal lights pulsing in patterns that suggested complex, silent communication despite their estrangement. I will participate, Vex decided first, her enhanced bioluminescence steady and controlled. with the understanding that security protocols will be followed precisely, and that I may withdraw at any point if I detect manipulation. All eyes turned to General Korth, whose internal light pulsed in patterns that revealed internal conflict. I will participate as well, he finally agreed, with the same conditions regarding security and withdrawal rights. Rex felt tension. He hadn't realized he was holding release from his shoulders. Thank you both. The princesses will coordinate technical preparations, while I complete my empathic training. As the faction leaders departed, separately, with careful timing to avoid direct contact outside the meeting room, Rex turned to the princesses, whose internal lights pulsed with undisguised excitement. They agreed, Zelaya said, her scientific caution momentarily overcome by hope. Both of them. The first joint decision they've made in nearly a decade, Ty added, her amber light brightening. We've only begun, Rex cautioned, though he shared their optimism. The actual gathering will test whether empathic connection can overcome years of distrust and grievance. But it's a start, Zelaya insisted. A significant one. The 7 days of preparation passed in a blur of intensive activity. Rex underwent daily empathic training sessions with the princesses, gradually increasing his capacity to serve as conduit for complex emotional exchanges. The neural enhancement compound was carefully calibrated for his human physiology, with each test session extending his ability to perceive and transmit empathic information without becoming overwhelmed. The ancient Hall of Concord was meticulously restored for the gathering, a joint effort that itself represented unprecedented cooperation between factions. The circular chamber, with its arched ceiling adorned with astronomical charts dating back millennia, provided both practical and symbolic space for the ritual. Security arrangements proved the most challenging aspect, with both faction leaders demanding extensive safeguards while simultaneously resisting the other's security requirements. Rex found himself mediating these negotiations as preliminary practice for the more significant mediation to come. Throughout this period, his relationship with Princesses Zelaya and Tai deepened through their shared work and regular empathic connections. What had begun as professional collaboration evolved into genuine attachment, with cultural differences becoming bridges rather than barriers as they explored each other's perspectives. The day of the Harmony gathering arrived with the tension of a military operation. Rex woke before dawn, reviewing mental protocols for maintaining empathic neutrality while serving as conduit between fundamentally opposed emotional realities. The princesses joined him for a final briefing over morning sustenance. Each faction has completed their security sweeps of the hall, Zelaya reported, her internal light pulsing with controlled excitement beneath professional composure. The ceremonial elements are in place. General Korth will arrive 2 hours before Admiral Vex, Ty added, allowing for the initial individual connection to be established without overlap. Rex nodded, maintaining outward calm despite the significance of what they were attempting. And the neural enhancement compound? Prepared according to the calibrations established during your training, Zelaya confirmed. The dosage has been adjusted for optimal human neurophysiology while maintaining equivalence to the Zarkan participants' formulations. The journey to the ancient hall took them through sectors of the capital city that showed signs of recent repair. Small, but significant indicators of reduced conflict, as both factions redirected resources from destruction to preparation for the gathering. The hall itself stood on elevated ground, its ancient stone construction having weathered both the current civil war and countless conflicts throughout Zarkan history. Inside, the circular chamber had been arranged according to traditional specifications, a central altar for shared sustenance, 3 meditation cushions positioned at equidistant points around it, and ceremonial lighting that mimicked the patterns of Zarkan's 3 moons. Rex took position in the chamber's center, beginning meditative preparations as the princesses supervised final arrangements. His mercenary training had included techniques for mental centering before high-risk operations. But the empathic challenges ahead demanded deeper levels of self-awareness. General Korth arrived precisely on schedule, his internal light pulsing with controlled tension beneath a veneer of ceremonial dignity. He wore traditional garments rather than military attire, though his characteristic scarification patterns remained visible through the translucent fabric. "Captain Vance," he acknowledged formally, "are you prepared for this undertaking?" "As prepared as possible," Rex replied honestly, "though I suspect nothing could fully prepare anyone for being the first off-worlder to participate in this ritual." Korth's internal light pulsed in what Rex now recognized as grudging respect. "Your willingness to attempt it deserves acknowledgement, regardless of the outcome." The initial phase of the gathering began with ritual cleansing, Korth and Rex washing their hands in scented water provided by the princesses, symbolizing the setting aside of external concerns. Next came the consumption of prepared sustenance, foods selected for their neural enhancement properties, and beverages containing the carefully calibrated compound that would facilitate empathic connection. As the substance began to take effect, Rex experienced the now familiar progression of sensory enhancement, Korth's internal light, revealing increasingly complex patterns. The hall's ancient stones seeming to pulse with the residual energy of countless gatherings conducted over millennia. "We begin the connection at your signal," Rex told the general, taking position on one of the meditation cushions. Korth settled onto his cushion, his forearms arranging themselves in the traditional posture for harmony gathering. "I am ready." Rex extended his hands, and Korth completed the circuit with two of his four hands. The initial contact sent a current of empathic energy between them, tentative at first, then strengthening as their nervous systems synchronized. The general's emotional landscape unfolded gradually, revealing layers of complexity that surpassed what Rex had experienced with the princesses. Beneath the expected military discipline and ideological commitment lay deeper currents, genuine concern for the agricultural communities under his protection, grief for cultural traditions threatened by technological homogenization, and personal wounds still raw from the broken connection with his former orbit partner. Following the ritual structure, Rex first acknowledged these emotions without judgment, allowing Korth to feel his recognition and respect for the general's perspective, regardless of ideological agreement. "Your commitment to preserving Zarkan's traditional communities comes from genuine care," Rex said aloud, the words serving as anchors for the empathic exchange flowing between them. "You fear that rapid technological integration would destroy ways of life that give meaning to millions of your people." Korth's internal light pulsed in confirmation, the empathic connection carrying emotional nuances that transcended verbal communication. Rex felt the general's relief at being truly understood, perhaps for the first time since the conflict began. "Now I will share my perspective," Rex continued, following the ritual structure, "not to change your position, but to expand mutual understanding." He allowed Korth to experience his own emotional reality, his outsider's view of the conflict's cost, his recognition that both traditional practices and technological advancement had value, his belief that integration need not mean erasure of cultural identity. The exchange continued for nearly an hour, progressing through increasingly deeper levels of empathic resonance. Rex carefully maintained the balance between authentic connection and professional distance, serving as both participant and observer of the process. As they concluded this first phase, Korth's internal light pulsed with a steadiness that hadn't been present when he arrived. "You have honored the ritual's intent," the general acknowledged as they separated. "I will meditate on what has been shared while you prepare for the Admiral's arrival." Rex spent the interval between sessions in careful recentering, assisted by the princesses, who helped him process the emotional residue from the intense exchange with Korth, while preparing for the equally challenging connection with Vex. His internal light patterns showed significant stabilization, Zelaya observed, monitoring Rex's vital signs. "A positive indicator." The emotional currents beneath his ideological position were stronger than he publicly acknowledges, Rex noted, particularly regarding Vex personally. Not surprising, Tai commented. Orbit partners who separate under conflict often maintain deeper connections than either admits. Admiral Vex arrived with characteristic precision, her enhanced bioluminescence creating striking patterns as she entered the ancient hall. Like Korth, she had set aside her military attire for ceremonial garments, though hers incorporated technological elements that complemented her augmented physiology. An interesting venue, she observed, studying the astronomical charts overhead. Our ancestors believed empathic resonance was strongest when aligned with celestial patterns. Do you share that belief? Rex asked, curious about her perspective on tradition despite her technological focus. I believe our ancestors observed real phenomena, but lacked scientific framework to explain them, Vex replied. The mineral composition of this chamber does enhance certain neural frequencies. A fact, not mysticism. The ritual proceeded as before: cleansing, sustenance, neural enhancement. As the compound took effect, Rex observed Vex's internal light patterns becoming more distinct, the technological augmentations creating unique harmonics in her bioelectrical field. When they established physical connection to begin the empathic exchange, Rex immediately noted differences from his experience with Korth, where the general's emotional landscape had unfolded gradually. Vex's presented with structured clarity, each emotional current precisely delineated, reflecting her more analytical approach to experience itself. Yet beneath this organization lay emotional depths that contradicted her public persona. Genuine concern for Zarkan's future technological development was driven not by cold efficiency, but by passionate belief in its potential to eliminate suffering. Her frustration with traditional practices stemmed not from dismissal of their value, but from recognition of their limitations in addressing planetary-scale challenges. And most surprisingly, deep regret about the broken connection with Korth, layered with unresolved hurt from what she perceived as his betrayal of trust. You believe technological advancement represents salvation, not destruction, Rex acknowledged, verbalizing key aspects of the empathic exchange. You see integration with broader galactic systems as essential for Zarkan's survival in an interconnected cosmos. Vex's enhanced light pulsed in affirmation, the empathic connection revealing her surprise and relief at being understood beyond ideological caricature. As with Korth, Rex then shared his own perspective, his recognition of technology's vital role in species development, alongside the importance of cultural continuity. His outsider's view of how the conflict had damaged both factions' stated goals. His belief that synthesis rather than victory offered the only sustainable path forward. Their exchange continued with increasing depth, Vex's analytical approach gradually yielding to more integrated emotional connection as the ritual progressed. By the conclusion of this second phase, her enhanced bioluminescence had settled into steadier patterns. The frenetic energy that characterized her arrival noticeably calmed. The process has merit, she acknowledged as they completed the connection, though the true test remains ahead. The final phase, the mediated empathic exchange between faction leaders, was scheduled for that evening, allowing both Korth and Vex time to process their individual experiences, while Rex prepared for the most challenging aspect of the gathering. Their emotional landscapes are both complex and contradictory, he told the princesses during the interval. Beneath their public positions lie much more nuanced perspectives and unresolved personal connection. That connection may prove crucial, Zalea suggested. If they can acknowledge their continued orbit bond, even in its broken state, it might provide foundation for broader reconciliation. Or trigger deeper conflict, Tai cautioned. Unresolved personal wounds can be more volatile than ideological differences. As twilight descended on Zarkan, both faction leaders returned to the ancient hall simultaneously, a calculated risk that Rex had insisted upon as necessary preparation for the joint connection to follow. Their initial interaction was stiffly formal, with careful distance maintained between them as they performed the preliminary ritual elements separately. Rex observed their internal lights, pulsing in patterns that revealed awareness of each other, despite attempted detachment. When all three took positions around the central altar, the chamber seemed to respond. Ancient lighting systems activating automatically, as they had for countless gatherings throughout Zarkan history. The final phase requires triangular connection, Rex explained, though both faction leaders already knew the protocol. I will serve as conduit between your emotional realities, filtering and translating as needed to prevent overwhelming resonance. Both leaders extended two hands toward Rex, who completed the circuit by connecting with both simultaneously. The initial empathic current was jarring, Korth's traditional patterns and Vex's enhanced frequencies creating discordant resonance that Rex had to consciously stabilize. Focus on me initially, he instructed them. Establish stable connection with my field before attempting to sense each other. Gradually, the empathic currents synchronized, allowing Rex to begin careful mediation between their disparate emotional landscapes. He first transmitted general impressions, allowing each to sense the authentic concern for Zarkan's welfare that motivated their opponent, without specific ideological content that might trigger defensive reactions. Both of you place your people's well-being at the center of your efforts, Rex verbalized, anchoring the empathic exchange. Your methods differ dramatically, but your core motivation shares common ground. The internal lights of both faction leaders pulsed in patterns that suggested surprise at this basic commonality, a recognition that had been obscured by years of conflict focused on methodological differences rather than shared goals. As the connection deepened, Rex carefully introduced more specific emotional currents. Korth's grief over cultural losses transmitted to Vex. Vex's frustration at technological stagnation shared with Korth. Each exchange was carefully calibrated, building toward the more challenging personal elements that lay beneath their political positions. There is personal history between you that affects your political positions, Rex acknowledged directly. The broken orbit bond influences your perspectives in ways neither fully recognizes. Both leaders' internal lights flared with momentary resistance, then steadied as the truth of the observation registered through the empathic connection. What followed was the most delicate phase of the mediation, Rex serving as conduit for the unresolved emotional currents between former partners whose personal relationship had fractured alongside their political alliance. Korth's sense of betrayal when Vex had embraced technological enhancement against traditional practices. Vex's hurt when Korth had attempted to use their personal connection to influence her political positions. Both leaders' underlying grief at the loss of a bond that had once defined their lives. Throughout this exchange, Rex maintained careful neutrality while allowing his own emotional reality to serve as stabilizing influence, his outsider's perspective providing context that neither faction leader could access from within their entrenched positions. Hours passed in this delicate, empathic dance, the ancient chamber seeming to pulse with energies awakened by the first true harmony gathering conducted within its walls in a decade. Gradually, Rex sensed shift in both leaders' emotional patterns, rigid boundaries softening, defensive barriers lowering, genuine recognition emerging of the other's authentic concerns and motivations. We cannot resolve a decade of conflict in a single gathering, Rex acknowledged as he sensed their empathic energy beginning to wane. But we can establish foundation for continued dialogue based on mutual understanding rather than caricatured opposition. As they prepared to conclude the connection, Rex felt surprising consensus forming between the faction leaders. Not agreement on specific policies, but recognition that neither's position was comprehensive enough alone to secure Zarkan's future. Integration rather than victory, Vex murmured, giving voice to the emerging insight. Preservation through adaptation, Korth responded, his internal light pulsing in patterns that harmonized with Vex's for the first time since their connection began. When they finally separated, All three participants remained silent for several moments, processing the profound exchange they had experienced. The princesses, who had observed from the chamber's periphery, approached with ceremonial beverages to aid transition back to normal consciousness. "A beginning," Rex said finally, accepting the drink gratefully. "Not an ending, but a significant beginning," Vex acknowledged, her enhanced light pulsing with steadier rhythms than Rex had previously observed. "One that must be built upon quickly," Korth added, his scarification patterns glowing with renewed clarity. "Before momentum is lost." What followed in subsequent days exceeded even Rex's cautious optimism. The faction leaders agreed to immediate cessation of direct hostilities while maintaining defensive postures, a preliminary step that nonetheless allowed for humanitarian aid to flow between regions for the first time in years. Joint councils were established to address immediate crises: food distribution to southern territories, technological maintenance for northern agricultural systems. These practical collaborations, while limited in scope, created frameworks for interaction that had been absent throughout the conflict. Most significantly, both leaders agreed to a series of subsequent harmony gatherings, conducted initially with Rex as mediator, but with stated goal of eventually re-establishing direct, empathic connection between them. 2 weeks after the initial gathering, King Orion summoned Rex to the throne room. The monarch's appearance had visibly improved, his internal light stronger, his posture more upright, as if physical manifestation of renewed hope. "Captain Vance," the king greeted him warmly. "Reports indicate progress beyond our most optimistic projections. The planetary destruction timeline has been suspended indefinitely." "It's a beginning, Your Majesty," Rex said, echoing his assessment from the gathering. "Sustainable peace will require continued effort. Effort that appears more possible now than at any point in the past decade." King Orion acknowledged. "You have fulfilled your contract beyond all expectations." Chancellor Keth stepped forward, carrying what appeared to be a formal document. "The agreed payment has been transferred to your accounts," he informed Rex. "With substantial bonus authorized by both faction leaders. Unprecedented joint financial action." "There is another matter," the king continued, his internal light pulsing in patterns that suggested both amusement and satisfaction. "My daughters have informed me of their intention to establish orbit bond with you." Rex maintained diplomatic composure despite his surprise at this direct acknowledgement. While his relationship with the princesses had deepened significantly through their shared work and empathic connections, they had maintained professional boundaries in public settings. "They have honored me with that intention, Your Majesty," Rex confirmed carefully, "though I understood such arrangements would require royal approval." "Which I am prepared to grant," King Orion replied, his internal light brightening. "With additional provision that has been traditional in our royal lineage during times of transition." Before Rex could inquire about this provision, the throne room doors opened to admit Princesses Zelaya and Tai, both dressed in formal attire that emphasized their royal status while complementing their distinct colorations. "Captain Rex Vance of Earth," King Orion announced formally, rising from his throne. "In recognition of your service to Zarkan and your unique position as bridge between worlds, I hereby offer you formal position within our royal structure, should you choose to accept it." The princesses approached to stand on either side of Rex, their internal lights pulsing with barely contained excitement. "What position?" Rex asked, genuinely uncertain of the king's intention. "Planetary orbiter," King Orion declared. "A role created specifically for unique circumstances such as these, where an off-worlder becomes essential to planetary stability through both diplomatic function and royal connection." Chancellor Keth stepped forward again, explaining. "The position would grant you diplomatic status equivalent to royal consort, while maintaining your independence as external representative. You would serve as formal mediator between factions, while establishing permanent connection to the royal lineage through orbit bond with the princesses." Rex felt the weight of the moment. What had begun as mercenary contract for substantial payment had evolved into opportunity to participate in healing a wounded world while establishing personal connections he hadn't imagined possible when accepting the mission. "I would be honored to accept, Your Majesty," he said, bowing formally. "Both the position and the connection it entails." The king's internal light pulsed with genuine pleasure. "Then, let it be proclaimed throughout Zarkan. The announcement will be transmitted to both faction territories simultaneously, another symbolic unification." The formal ceremony took place 1 month later in the ancient Hall of Concord, now officially redesignated as Center for Ongoing Harmony Gatherings and Peace Negotiations. Both faction leaders attended, their public appearance together sending powerful message throughout Zarkan's divided territories. Rex's orbit bond with the princesses was established through adapted version of traditional royal ceremony, incorporating elements from Earth marriage traditions that Rex had shared during their cultural exchanges. The unprecedented nature of the bond, an off-worlder connecting with royal twins, became symbol of new possibilities, rather than breach of tradition. His formal investiture as planetary orbiter followed, with both faction leaders participating in the ceremony, Korth representing traditional authority structures, Vex embodying evolutionary adaptation. Their joint participation, unimaginable months earlier, demonstrated tangible progress toward reconciliation. In the years that followed, Zarkan's path toward reunification proceeded with inevitable challenges, but sustained momentum. The initial cessation of hostilities evolved into formal peace treaty, with provisions for integrated governance that incorporated both traditional practices and technological advancement. Rex's role as planetary orbiter became essential diplomatic position, allowing him to move freely between factions while maintaining connection to royal authority. His unique perspective as off-worlder, who had deeply experienced Zarkan culture through empathic connection, gave him credibility with all parties. His personal life evolved alongside his professional role. His orbit bond with Zelaya and Tai, deepening through continued harmony connections that transcended cultural differences. Their union represented living example of integration that Zarkan itself was attempting, different perspectives united through mutual respect and genuine attachment. 5 years after the initial harmony gathering, as Zarkan's rebuilding efforts transformed the scarred capital into integrated city, incorporating both traditional elements and technological innovation, the royal physicians announced unprecedented development. Both princesses had conceived simultaneously. Despite the biological challenges of cross-species reproduction, the birth of twin offspring, one bearing Zalaya's characteristic blue internal light, the other, Tai's amber illumination, both displaying subtle physical characteristics that reflected their human heritage, became symbol of Zarkan's new era. The royal children, first cross-species offspring in recorded history, embodied the integration that their world was striving to achieve. The announcement of their birth was celebrated throughout both territories, with ceremonial gatherings held in traditional agricultural communities and technological centers alike. General Korth and Admiral Vex, whose own relationship had gradually evolved from wary cooperation to renewed personal connection, served as formal witnesses at the royal naming ceremony, another unprecedented joint appearance that reinforced the continuing reconciliation. "They represent what we are becoming," King Orion declared during the public presentation of his grandchildren, "not erasing our past, but evolving toward a future that honors both tradition and progress." Rex, standing with Zelaya and Tai as they presented their offspring to Zarkan society, felt the weight of symbolism their family had come to represent. What had begun as mercenary assignment had transformed into lifetime commitment to a world not his own, yet now inextricably part of his identity. "Never imagined this outcome when I stepped off that shuttle," he murmured to his orbit partners as they returned to their private chambers after the ceremony. "The universe unfolds in patterns we cannot predict," Zelaya replied, her scientific perspective tempered by years of shared experience. Especially when catalysts like you are introduced to stable systems. Our stability had become stagnation, Tai added, cradling the amber-illuminated infant. Your disruptive presence was precisely what our world required. Later that evening, as the royal children slept in their monitored cradles, Rex stood at the balcony overlooking the capital city. Where once he had seen only destruction and division, the landscape now showed signs of integration. Traditional architectural elements incorporated into rebuilt structures. Agricultural practices enhanced by targeted technology. Cultural celebrations embracing both heritage and innovation. Harmony gatherings had been fully re-established throughout Zarkan society, no longer requiring Rex's mediation as citizens reclaimed their cultural practice of empathic connection. The ritual had evolved to incorporate new elements reflecting the changed society. Acknowledgement of factional perspectives as valuable rather than oppositional. Recognition of integration as strength rather than compromise. The weapons of planetary destruction that had motivated Rex's initial contract had been dismantled under joint supervision, their components repurposed for life-sustaining infrastructure projects that benefited both territories. The timeline of extinction had been replaced by generational planning for sustainable development. Contemplating your impact, King Orion's voice came from behind him. The monarch had aged visibly in the years since Rex's arrival, but his internal light remained strong, pulsing with a steady rhythm of renewed purpose. Wondering at the improbability of it all, Rex admitted, one human mercenary changing the course of an entire civilization. Not one mercenary, the king corrected gently. One catalyst at precisely the right moment, connecting with precisely the right elements. The potential for change existed within our society. You merely provided the spark and framework. Rex turned from the view to face his children's grandfather. Still, the outcome exceeded all projections. The most meaningful outcomes often do, Orion replied, his internal light pulsing with what Rex had come to recognize as royal satisfaction. When I contracted your services, I sought merely to prevent extinction. I did not dare hope for renaissance. The king moved to stand beside Rex at the balcony rail, both looking out over the healing world below. Your offspring will inherit a Zarkan, very different from the one you found. They will be neither fully human nor fully Zarkan, but something new, representatives of possibilities we could not have imagined before your arrival. The first generation of many, I hope, Rex said, thinking of the future implications of the biological breakthrough their children represented. Indeed, the king agreed. General Korth and Admiral Vex have announced their intention to re-establish their orbit bond formally. Their reconciliation has particular significance for citizens who remember their former partnership. Rex smiled at this news, though it didn't entirely surprise him. The faction leaders' gradual reconnection had been evident in recent Harmony gatherings. Their internal lights increasingly synchronized, despite their continued policy disagreements on specific implementation details. Reconciliation doesn't require perfect agreement, he observed. Just mutual respect and recognition of shared goals. A wisdom your presence helped us rediscover, Orion acknowledged. Though implementing it remains daily challenge in governance. The conversation was interrupted by a soft chime, indicating one of the infants had awakened. Rex excused himself to attend to his parental duties, another role he had never anticipated when accepting the contract that had brought him to Zarkan. In the nurturing chamber, he found Zelaya already tending to the blue-illuminated child, whose internal light pulsed with patterns that somehow combined Zarkan bioluminescence with distinctly human emotional expressions. The infant's partially translucent skin revealed circulatory and nervous systems that medical specialists were still studying to understand the unique hybrid physiology. She sensed your contemplative mood, Zelaya informed him, her scientific observation overlaid with maternal perception.
The empathic connection between you registers in her nervous system. Rex took the child carefully, still adjusting to the delicacy required when handling offspring, whose physical structure differed significantly from human infants. Empathic from birth, he marveled. A generation that won't need to learn what we struggle to rediscover. That's our true legacy, Tai said, joining them with the amber-illuminated twin. Not merely ending conflict, but establishing foundation for connection that future generations will build upon. As the family unit gathered in the peaceful chamber, their internal lights, Zarkan, bioluminescence, and human emotional presence created harmony that symbolized the world's transformation. What had begun in desperate attempt to prevent destruction had evolved into creation of new possibilities that would unfold for generations to come. 10 years later, as the twin royal offspring approached the developmental stage where formal education began, Zarkan had been fundamentally transformed. The former border between territories remained visible from orbit, but functioned as administrative boundary rather than division, with free movement of citizens, resources, and ideas flowing in both directions. Rex, now fluent in empathic communication through years of harmony gatherings and daily connection with his orbit partners, had established diplomatic protocols for Zarkan's reintegration into interstellar community. His unique position as both royal consort and off-world representative made him ideal ambassador for a civilization reintroducing itself after a decade of isolation during civil conflict. The harmony gathering ritual, once abandoned during factional fighting, had been adapted as diplomatic protocol when engaging with other species, modified to accommodate various physiologies while maintaining essential elements of empathic exchange. Rex's successful participation had demonstrated possibility of cross-species application that Zarkan diplomats now employed throughout the sector. The royal children, first of what had become small but growing population of human Zarkan hybrids, displayed unique characteristics that educational specialists were still documenting. Their partially translucent physiology revealed bioluminescent patterns inherited from their Zarkan heritage, while their cognitive and emotional development incorporated human adaptability alongside Zarkan empathic sensitivity. They navigate between cultures instinctively, Zelaya observed during family gathering, celebrating completion of their primary development stage. What required conscious effort for us has become natural state for them. The true gift of hybridization, Tai agreed, her diplomatic training giving her particular appreciation for their children's integrative abilities. Not merely combining physical traits, but creating new cultural perspectives. Rex watched as their offspring demonstrated recently mastered harmony connection technique for appreciative audience that included King Orion, whose advanced age had diminished his physical presence, but not his royal authority. The monarch's internal light still pulsed with satisfaction when observing his grandchildren, living embodiment of the reconciliation his desperate gamble had set in motion years earlier. General Korth and Admiral Vex, titles they maintained though their roles had evolved from military leadership to administrative governance, attended the celebration as honored guests and unofficial grandparents. Their re-established orbit bond had become symbol of reconciliation for entire generation who had known only conflict before Rex's intervention. "Did you anticipate this outcome when you hired me?" Rex asked the faction leaders as they observed the children's demonstration. "Hardly," Vex acknowledged, her enhanced bioluminescence having evolved into more integrated system that complemented rather than overshadowed her natural patterns. "I expected diplomatic failure, followed by military resolution." "I anticipated similar outcome with opposite victor," Korth admitted. His traditional scarification now incorporated into technological monitoring system that represented compromise between their formerly opposed approaches. "Instead, we achieved something neither of us had imagined," Vex concluded, her internal light pulsing in harmony with her orbit partners. True integration, rather than dominance of either perspective.
Because Captain Vance introduced framework that transcended our binary thinking, Korth added, using Rex's former military title as gesture of respect for his original role. Later that evening, as celebration concluded and family retired to their private quarters, Rex found moment of quiet reflection in royal gardens that had been redesigned to incorporate both traditional Zarkan botanicals and adapted Earth species, another physical manifestation of the integration that had become planetary ethos. Contemplating your journey? Chancellor Keth inquired, joining him on garden bench. The royal advisor had aged alongside his monarch, but maintained active role in governance transitions that continued reshaping Zarkan society. Wondering what would have happened if I'd rejected the contract, Rex admitted. One decision changing countless lives. Including your own most significantly, Keth observed. His internal light pulsing with patterns that had become familiar through years of diplomatic collaboration. Rex nodded, thinking of the family unit he had established. So different from any relationship structure he might have formed on Earth, yet more fulfilling than he could have imagined when arriving as mercenary, focused primarily on substantial payment. No regrets, he said simply, though the path has been more complex than anticipated. The most meaningful paths often are, Keth replied, echoing sentiment King Orion had expressed years earlier. You came seeking payment but found purpose. And family, Rex added, watching as Zelaya and Tai approached across the garden, their internal lights visible in the gathering dusk. Their children followed behind, the blue and amber illumination of the twins creating patterns against the evening shadows that symbolized light emerging from darkness, much as Zarkan itself had emerged from conflict into renewed harmony. As they gathered together under Zarkan's 3 moons, their family unit represented living embodiment of the world's transformation, not erasing differences, but embracing them, not seeking dominance but connection, not fearing change but guiding it toward construction rather than destruction. The harmony that had seemed impossible when Rex first viewed the broken landscape from shuttle ramp had become not merely diplomatic achievement, but personal reality. Sustainable peace built on genuine understanding rather than enforced compromise. What had begun as alien kings' desperate gamble had transformed an entire civilization, created new form of family, and established framework for generations of integration yet to come. The reward that had shocked the court when first proposed, incorporation of off-world mercenary into royal lineage, had proven merely first step in journey. None could have predicted, but all now celebrated as foundation of Zarkan's renewed future. To harmony, Rex said softly, using traditional Zarkan toast that had been revived alongside the gathering ritual. To harmony. His family responded in unison, their varied internal lights pulsing together in visual representation of the connection that had healed a world and created new possibilities that would continue unfolding long after the human who had catalyzed them completed his own life journey. The light they created together illuminated not merely the garden, but the promise of continued evolution. Harmony, not as static state, but as ongoing process of connection, understanding, and growth that would guide Zarkan and its first hybrid generation toward futures none could fully predict, but all had helped make possible.